These are the things that we just assume and believe and we've been taught, and it's really hard to get away from these things. The first one is that faith and science are two competing ideas, when in reality, the actual disparity is between methodological naturalism, which is there's nothing supernatural, and supernaturalism, which means let the evidence lead where it wants, even if it has a supernatural conclusion. Naturalism isn't a scientific discipline, it's a philosophical a priori commitment. Saying we can't come to a God conclusion is what the scientist says before they walk into the lab. So we shouldn't be shocked when we hear that scientists come to non-theistic conclusions. They're not even allowed to. One great philosopher said this is called the NOMA principle. These are non-overlapping magisterial authorities. A scientist cannot walk into a lab and come out with a God conclusion. Those are category errors. They belong in different systems altogether, but they're not competing ideas. This is Dr. Paul Davies. There's actually an asteroid named after him. He's a theoretical physicist, Templeton Prize winner, brilliant dude. People take it for granted that the physical world is both ordered and intelligible. Even the most atheistic scientist accepts as an act of faith, right here, as an act of faith that the universe is not absurd, that there is rational basis to physical existence manifested as law-like order in nature that is at least partly comprehensible to us. So science can proceed only if the scientist adopts an essentially theological worldview. Here's what he's saying. This is what Rosalind Pickard, professor of science at MIT, she's an inventor. When she talks, I go, what are you saying? Which is what a lot of you are doing right now. There's a lot of truth that has happened in the past and in the metaphysical world that we can't prove today like you could something mathematical. And of course, all of our science and our math rests upon axioms and things that we assert through faith. So people who think they can't deal with faith are just deceiving themselves. We all deal with faith. Scientists deal with faith all the time. I know that you're a faithful person because you believe without any evidence that the universe did not come into being 5 minutes ago and all of your memories are just implanted into you as some sort of programmed system like the Matrix. Prove it. No, you're not gonna prove it. The fact that I'm speaking language and right now you're doing the laws of logic, you're just assuming that those are the case. When you make plans for tomorrow and you say, tomorrow I'm gonna drive to Trader Joe's and not have a parking spot, right? You're assuming uniformity of nature. You're assuming that tomorrow internal combustion will still be a thing, that cars will still go forward, that gravity won't reverse itself, there won't be a polarity of persons, that we won't all turn into cheese. The only reason we believe that that won't happen is because that's what used to happen. That's an ad hoc argument. It didn't used to be that way. It has consistently not been that way. So we're gonna predict on faith that it won't be that way. And when you ask someone, what gives you this confidence? An atheist will say, I'm very confident that tomorrow we won't turn into cheese. The word confidence comes from the word confide, which means with faith, okay? You can't escape it. And this is what they're telling you. They're trying to tell you this isn't a disparity. Science is about explaining the world and religion is about interpreting it. There shouldn't be any conflict. Dr. Alistair McGrath, triple doctorate from Oxford. Dr. John Bloom, director of science, Biola. A moment's reflection shows that this dichotomy is mistaken. Science needs faith at many levels. A scientist must have faith in the reliability of his senses and instruments, in the applicability of mathematics, in the regularities of nature, in the ability to think and reason, and his colleagues, right? We develop theories based on what other people who created those theories, or Hubble's telescope, or Einstein's theory of relativity, we're assuming they did good math. We just trust it. We assume that when I'm seeing something, my mind isn't playing a trick on me. But the question comes in, if you are strictly a materialistic mind, then what are minds made for? 4 things, 4 Fs. We're gonna do 3 Fs and 1 R, okay? Fleeing, fighting, feeding, and reproduction, okay? Which means if Darwinism, evolution, and naturalistic methodological naturalism and scientism is true, then why would we expect our brains to be a truth-seeking phenomena? Why would we think that our brain has any value whatsoever? If our brains exist as simply a 3-pound bit of organism to help us do those 4 things, then why are we using it to understand the complexities of the universe? It should just be a survival mechanism, not a truth-seeking mechanism. This is what Darwin said. If my theory is true, I've got no reason to believe my theory is true. Because if my theory is true, I've got a monkey's brain that evolved far enough for me to question why I've got a monkey's brain in a system that gives me a monkey's brain. I've shot myself in the foot, Darwin says, if I think that all of my processes are naturalistic instead of truth-seeking at their core. Why would I expect to believe what I'm thinking? To dismiss this dilemma and say, well, that's just the way the world is an ad hoc basis to practice science.